For the statistical hypothesis test and calculation for questions 1 through 6. Question 1. Hypothesis test for a proportion. We begin with a test for a single proportion. The librarian claims that the true proportion of students who improve their test scores after tutoring is less than or equal to 30%. This form are not null hypothesis. The alternative hypothesis is that the true proportion is greater than 30%, indicating an improvement. Since we are testing a proportion with a sample size greater than 30, the appropriate test value to compute is the z-statistic. Our calculation yielded a z-score of approximately 1.16. For a 1% significant level, the critical value for the one-sided right tail test is 2.33. Because our test value of 1.16 is less than the critical value, it does not fall into the rejection region. Therefore, we do not reject the null hypothesis. There is no insufficient evidence to support the claim that the tutoring center produces better outcomes. Question 2. Two-sample t-test for means. Next, we address the comparison of average work-study hours between honors and non-honors students. This is a two-sample t-test for an independent means. The null hypothesis states that the average work-study hours are equal for both groups. The alternative hypothesis states that the average are not equal, suggesting a two-tailed test. The appropriate test statistic is the t-statistic for independent samples with unknown but equal standard deviation. We calculate the t-value to be approximately negative 3.52. At a 10% significant level, the critical t-values are positive and negative 1.699. Since our test values of negative 3.5262 is less than negative 1.699, the value is in the rejection region. We therefore reject the null hypothesis. We conclude that there is a significant difference in the average work-study hours between the two groups. Question 3. Linear regression and correlation. In this problem, we explore the linear relationship between unit load and grade percentage. First, we calculated the correlation coefficient, which measured the strength and direction of the linear relationship. Our value was approximately negative 0.45. This indicates a weak negative correlation. Next, we determined the regression line. The slope, represented by the letter A, was calculated to be negative 4.4. The y-intercept, represented by the letter B, was 120. The equal of the line is y hat equals negative 4.4 x plus 120. Finally, we use the registration equation to predict the grade percentage for a unit load of 11.5. The predicted grade percentage is 69.4. Question 4. Chi-square godness of fit test. This test compares the distribution of gym members' opinions on towel services to the reported national proportions. This is a chi-square godness of fit test. The null hypothesis is that the gym's distribution matches the national poll. The alternative hypothesis is that the distributions are different. The expected frequency is calculated by multiplying the sample size by the hypothesis population proportion. We computed the chi-square test value to be 30.61. This is always a right tail test. At a 10% significant level with 2 degrees of freedom, the critical value is 4.605. Since 30.61 is much larger than the critical value, the test value is in the registration region. Thus, we reject the null hypothesis and conclude that the gym member opinions are significantly different from the national poll. Question 5. Chi-square test for independence. We are now testing if running phonetic identity is independent of their opinion on indoor running. This is the chi-square test for independence. The null hypothesis states that the identity and opinion are independent. The alternative states that they are independent. For this test, the expected frequency is calculated by multiplying the row sum by the column sum and dividing by the grand total. Our computed chi-square test value is approximately 1.68. This is a right tail test. With 2 degrees of freedom and a 10% significant level, the critical value is 4.605. Our test value of 1.68 is not in the rejection region. We therefore do not reject the null hypothesis, concluding that there is no sufficient evidence of a relationship between identity and opinion. Question 6. One-way analysis of variation, ANOVA. Finally, we use a one-way ANOVA test to compare the average car sales across the 3 groups of salespeople. The null hypothesis states that all three population means are equal. The alternative hypothesis states that the least one of the means is different. After calculating the means and variance for each group, we determined that the grand mean to be 5.39. We also found the between group variance and the within group variance. The final f-test value is the ratio of these variances, yielding 1.34. This is always the right-tailed test. The critical f value is 3.89. Since our test value of 1.34 is not in the rejection region, we do not reject the null hypothesis. We conclude that there is not enough evidence to say that the average sales are different across the three groups of salespeople. Thank you.